All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Matthew Kaufman here. I am the host of Integrative Thoughts. I'm one of the co-founders of Valence Nutraceuticals. I am a mineral nutritional balancing practitioner. I've been trained by Susan Cachet in particular. I went through her course and I work with ARL Labs, but also I have a lot of good mentors. Obviously, my partners in Valence have been in the space for over a decade. I ask Clark occasionally when I have questions. Susan, I had Robert Seelig on my podcast and I ask him questions sometimes. So I try to get a well-rounded perspective around mineral balancing in particular. And, my background is basically I was, addicted to a lot of drugs and partying and things like that. And my health crashed. And I went through lots of different hoops and jumps through Western medicine and MRI scans for tumors and cancer. And, I just was so down bad with my health and basically very chronically ill and circled around and went to Dr. Minkoff and did like a $20,000 Lyme disease treatment. I, reading genetics and all kinds of different stuff. And, nothing really moved the needle for me until I found mineral balancing and began to detox my heavy metals and balance out my system. And I continue to go through eliminations and continue to get better and better. I also have my wife on the program and had my wife do her entire pregnancy with the Valence and Endomet supplements. And we have a perfect healthy boy. And I just now started giving him some of the Valence supplements. So for me, it's kind of been like my world. And unlike some of the other practitioners, nothing against them, who came from, training with Dr. Wilson and focusing on Dr. Paul Eck, totally fine. They saved my life and they saved my health and all of that. I do use a lot of therapies and other supplements technically that most mineral balancing practitioners do not use. They're a little bit more rigid. Nothing against that. It's kind of a controlled experiment, in my opinion. If you don't use outside supplements, it's kind of maybe a little bit harder to gauge how the patterns are moving specifically. Say someone's adding in some extra supplements on the side. I'm a little strict with outside supplements personally myself. I make sure all my clients send me over whatever supplements they continue to take. I'm just a little less rigid than like the Dr. Wilson camp. And I know a lot of people have broke free from that type of thinking and realize that there are a lot of compounds and, whether it be supplements or peptides or therapies that can definitely help, especially as we keep getting decades and decades further into increased levels of toxicity. I'm pretty sure anybody who's a practitioner here or even a client listening, they kind of understand that, we're a lot more toxic than we were, 20, 30, 40 years ago when Dr. Paul Eck and Dr. Wilson started practicing and things like that. So I like to use some of these other therapies, and I thought it would be interesting to talk about some other supplements and therapies and stuff like that I use on the side that I don't always recommend to my clients because it's already kind of a lot of supplements and stuff like that. So I don't always go like super advanced level with them. I may add in one or two here and there depending on their client intake form or specific diagnosis or something. But for the most part, I stick to just like the Valence or the Endomet supplements depending on the hair chart. But me, myself, I do use a lot of other compounds. And I thought it'd be interesting to speak about some of those because I think most people are going to be talking about minerals in specific and how they, benefited from Valence because kind of is a Valence summit, even though you don't have to talk about Valence on here. And I do have another video that I'm going to share. I know a lot of people who follow me personally, they've already seen the video or heard the audio of me on Luke Story's podcast. So that was a pretty big podcast that I did. I thought I gave a pretty decent overview of mineral balancing, a relatively basic level. It wasn't super, super scientific, but it was definitely pretty well-rounded, I would say, and kind of explains how mineral balancing is a little bit different than replacement theory and other ways of interpreting hair tests. So I'm actually going to upload that video to this summit as well for anybody who's never seen that. Feel free to check that out. It's got a really, really high quality video to it. So I thought that would be cool for everyone to check that out. It's like a couple hours long, so you can go to Luke's Stories video and just watch it there on Spotify or YouTube if you want, but it'll also be right here in the summit. And so I'm going to have that as a video already, kind of explaining mineral balancing, how we do things a little bit differently, talking about valence a little bit and stuff like that. So that's already going to be there. And so for this video specifically, I'm planning on focusing on some of the other stuff that I use that I don't always recommend to clients, but you may want to play around with them and see if they benefit you in your program. And, step outside of the box. There's a lot of different avenues you can take to try to mitigate some of the chronic inflammation, energy deficits, and overall, reactive oxygen species and things like that to try to calm down the storm that's going on while we're eliminating heavy metals. Because, as you come into a mineral balancing program, depending on your level of toxicity, you're already going to have quite a bit of inflammation. But then as we begin to stir things around, a lot of times, especially for very sensitive people like me, who is very chronic, you actually can start to break down parasites, cause some ammonia issues, histamine issues, inflammatory issues as you move a lot of these metals around, break down biofilms, get rid of parasites. As all that's happening, it can kind of ramp up before it gets better. And so I like some of these outside supplements to try to work with that, because me specifically, I think I had a lot of heavy metals in my brain due to having I had like 7 or 8 mercury fillings, and they were extracted improperly. And I have some, podcast episodes with dentists about how bad that is, basically. It's pretty much worse than leaving them in my opinion. Although you're getting a small amount of mercury poisoning through the vaporization in your mouth when you're drinking coffee and tea and chewing. When you get those extracted improperly from like a regular dentist, it becomes like an acute exposure and it goes right into the brain. So for me, I had a lot of mental issues, depression, anxiety, as all of the heavy metals are coming out, and I still get that from time to time. So I like to utilize a few of these outside therapies, and I think they can work well for people. And I just figured I'd throw it out here in a video because I don't always recommend it to clients, but they're useful. And, it's a little bit more of an advanced protocol when you step into some of these supplements that I'm going to say. It costs more money, it takes more time, you got to have more dedication. So I kind of acknowledge all that, and I don't really always recommend that to clients because I'm already have them on, 7, 8, 9 supplements 3 times a day, doing binders and enemas. And so it's already pretty advanced from the beginning, and it's pretty much dedicated to the program for a while until you start to feel better. Then you can get a little bit looser with the protocol, in my opinion. But these can help for anybody who is very sensitive like me, who maybe had the mercury filling extractions come out the wrong way and think that they have mercury in their brain. Because mercury specifically has some properties to it that basically affect GABA and how you actually reuptake glutamate into GABA, and deals with some NMDA receptors. So when it's in the brain, you can have a lot of those type of symptoms arise that are due to GABA and nervous system distress and inflammation of the brain. And it can be very, very tricky or very challenging to get through the program and through some of those eliminations, in my opinion, without a little extra help on the side. So that's what I'm going to break down today. So it does make it a little bit more of a high level, more advanced protocol when you start stepping into some of these supplements. But I figured it would be a little bit different than what everyone else was talking about on the summit. We're going to have a lot of good practitioners on here talking about minerals and mineral imbalances and the valence subs or whatever supplements they use. And I think it's going to be cool. And I already have that other video with Luke that breaks it down pretty well. And so I'm going to talk about some of these outside supplements. I think it would be cool. So the first supplement I'm going to get into here that I really have used off and on that you have to really, really be careful with, especially sourcing, is going to be CBD. I love good quality, high quality CBD. Now, the issue with CBD and cannabis alike is that a lot of it does contain heavy metals. They are kind of these bioremediators that when they are grown in, any kind of artificial fertilizers or, even outdoors where the climate or the environment isn't really all that clean and they're not doing any kind of testing, then you can actually be retoxifying yourself with some heavy metals while you're trying to get some beneficial properties from CBD. So caveat there, you have to be really, really meticulous with sourcing on CBD. If anybody wants to reach out to me, my buddy has a really amazing biodynamic, organic, full spectrum CBD that's actually typically in the right dosage. Now, that's the other issue here. When it comes to CBD and people take CBD, actually generally try some of these cheaper capsules, or even if it's a high quality one, it's like 5, 10, 20 milligrams From what I've read in the research, it definitely seems like you need to be in like the 2 to 300 milligram ranges. It kind of goes on body weight. I weigh 225, so a little bit on the bigger side. So I'm more in that like 300 milligram range where I start to actually get the benefits, right? And it's really cool over at Sacred Circle, the CBD company. You can use my discount code. It's ITP, or if you hit me up, I can send you a link. My buddy grows everything on his organic biodynamic farm. It's a really great company. He does a really great job, and it's been the most beneficial that I've found. And I've tried most every CBD. I've been taking it for 5 or 6 years. And so CBD, if you don't know CBD, it's basically there is slight amounts of THC. You can find some companies that do not have THC in them, especially if you have to take like drug tests. That trace amount of THC will show up on a drug test. If you're in any kind of government job or any kind of job where you may take a drug test, I would highly recommend not doing the THC version. But that small amount of THC does help out with that endocannabinoid system. And so you want to kind of have a really, really well functioning, endocannabinoid system, in my opinion. And there are some studies that will show that it actually could help support liver and kidneys. And what happens there is, the metals themselves, when we're trying to eliminate them, they are taxing our organs of elimination. Now, we see a lot of metals come out through skin and through hair, but, a lot of them are coming out through urine and feces, especially if you're giving the right digestive aid and bile support and kidney support, like we've kind of created over with BioFlow Plus and the Shin Force. So the more you're opening up the organs of elimination, the more they're going to be taxing the organs of elimination. That's where we're trying to shuttle all of these toxins out, and that's what we're trying to do here. So the endocannabinoid system can actually help with the liver and the kidneys. They also have a lot of anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties, which is kind of the key theme of some of these supplements that I'm using. We're looking for anti-inflammatory properties, in my opinion. If the body has an overwhelming amount of inflammation from the toxicity, it's going to be harder, for one, for your hormones to be working properly, but for two, to detox. So these outside supplements, in my opinion, are going to be looking a lot at kind of how are we like reducing reactive oxygen species, how are we lowering inflammation so that we can better, easily, and calmly eliminate some of these metals. So CBD, and especially in the higher doses, really, really good for anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties there, right? The one I like about it most, back to my mercury exposure, and the kind of like brain region that I feel like a lot of my heavy metals were in, is that CBD has really good neuroprotection properties. So, mercury, lead, I think even cadmium, aluminum, they can take quite a toll if they did pass that blood-brain barrier and cause a lot of psychological issues, inflammatory issues. And so taking that high-dose CBD is going to help bring in some neuroprotective properties that are going to aid in how you feel while you eliminate the metals. Is it going to vanish all of the symptoms completely? No. Obviously, if you're moving a metal out of your brain, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. But can we calm down that storm a little bit so that we can continue to push through a little bit harder on the detox program? And I think that's what happens for me. I take a good like 100 milligrams or so of the daytime CBD in my coffee in the morning. And that kind of helps with, obviously being able to tolerate a little bit of coffee when you are a little bit more sensitive as well. So things like L-theanine could be an addition there. Some kind of like glycine, where you do either just straight glycine or collagen powder, but really the CBD as well, and blending some fats in there kind of help you be able to tolerate a little bit of that stimulant and also be kind of more calm as well. So I like to put my daytime CBD in the coffee, and then at night I will take a more hefty dose, like 200 milligrams of the more kind of nighttime formula that is more formulated for like sleep and deep rest. So the sleep issue with CBD, not issue, I guess, the sleep benefits are also another added benefit, because when we are eliminating and when we are detoxifying in general, being parasympathetic is key. So if you're not in any kind of parasympathetic state, pretty much ever, you're going to be stuck in those kind of sympathetic dominant patterns, those four lows patterns. So if you want things to shift, you need to be parasympathetic. And not everybody has a lifestyle or has a job or has kids where they can just sit around and meditate and nap all day. Now, I do think you need to create some space, even if you are busy like I did. Like I was taking naps quite frequently in the beginning of my program, and you do want to make sure you're getting that rest. But at nighttime, this is an easy way to supplement and shift your body more parasympathetic, and so that you get a little bit of a deeper rest, more recovery, and better detox abilities at night. So has that stress and that anxiety reduction process from the CBD, the anxiolytic processes from the anxiety reducing. And so that kind of calm you down and shift you more into a nighttime routine and then make you sleep better. So sleep is a really, really good goal. There's even some limited sources on CBD that says it might help with glutamine synthase. It's an enzyme that's involved in ammonia metabolism. And so it could maybe even potentially support glutathione and antioxidants that bind heavy metals through glutathione production. So I think it's beneficial. I think you have to be careful with sourcing, but CBD is a really, really good addition if it's a clean source to a mineral balancing program. Next up, I like NAD. I have went off and on NAD, but mostly on NAD my entire program. There's lots of different ways to take NAD. You can do the precursors through like NMN. We do give some B3 on the program. So some people really argue that you can just take B3, a niacinamide, to boost NAD, and I think there is some good research there. I prefer the actual compound, NAD+, and the suppositories that I use from MitoZen are really, really good. So why I like the suppositories is that some people believe, especially Dr. John Lawrence, who created the suppositories, he also does the IVs in his clinic in Sarasota. He believes that your cells can actually only uptake so much NAD in a specific period of time. And so what happens with the suppository is you're getting a time-released version that's also bypassing digestion, and you're getting 500 milligrams of the NAD+, but also 250 milligrams of multiple different precursors like NR and NMN. So you're getting precursors and the actual NAD. I found that to be very, very potent, especially for spinal inflammation and neuroinflammation. So when I take the suppository, I usually do about one a week. When I'm really going through it, I would do multiple a week, 2 a week. They're around. You have to buy a 12-pack of them, and I think it's usually like $180. So I mean, it's not overly expensive if you're only doing like one a week. It's maybe like 16, 18 bucks per week. It's not crazy. You could even do one every few weeks if it was, more budget friendly. But I think getting that little bit of NAD, and that's actually a lot of NAD. That's as much as they put in a IV. And so NAD, if you don't know it, really helps boost like just cellular energy ATP production. So heavy metals, in my opinion, they obviously shut down a lot of ATP production. Things like nickel can, displace magnesium and, disrupt ATP there. But I think every heavy metal is shutting down enzyme functions all throughout the system that basically shut down energy production. If you've ever read Dr. Paul Eck, you understand that minerals create energy. Obviously, when you have a heavy metal in place of that mineral, you're going to be disrupting energy. So I really like it specifically just for energy purposes the most. But I do think there's even some pretty good, geneticists that talk about iron as well. So iron, as you know, any practitioners or clients, you generally release some form of toxic iron on your program. A lot of people do blood donations and things like that. Well, that dysregulated toxic iron, overloaded iron, can actually steal NAD. It's through a genetic kind of like a swap called NADPH steal. So excess iron specifically has been shown to rob you of your NAD. But I think most toxins in the heavy world also put stress on the system, and they do lower your NAD levels. It's one of the first things that I think get depleted. And so I think it's often overlooked. You can take NAD orally if you want, but I prefer the NAD suppositories. They also support antioxidant defense systems, which a lot of the heavy metals shut down, obviously, reactive oxygen species. And so you're really looking for that there. It's going to support liver function, which is central to detoxification. It definitely uses phase 1 and phase 2 pathways to process and excrete toxins. And NAD is going to support both of these phases of liver detoxification and support the liver. Obviously, reducing inflammation. NAD supports, sirtuins, which are proteins that regulate inflammation and cellular stress, which the metals, in my opinion, are triggering those kind of inflammatory responses. NAD can even enhance DNA repair, leading to, the DNA damage caused by some of these heavy metals can lead to cellular dysfunction. And so you can actually use the NAD to actually help enhance the DNA repair as we're moving through and getting the heavy metals out of the way. So I think NAD is great. Figure out what one works for you. It's generally a little bit more expensive, but I like the suppositories because you don't have to go to a clinic. You don't have to even leave your house. And NAD IV, I've seen them anywhere from like $250 all the way up to $500 for an IV. And so you get the same dosage with a suppository that you can just use at home for, $16, $18. And so I like to run with the suppositories. Maybe they're not as effective as IVs. I've never even done an NAD IV because they're so expensive. But I know that I do get a lot of benefits, energy production. I feel pain in my spine go down. I have more energy, more clarity in thinking. So for me, NAD has been a pretty relative compound that I've used very consistently throughout my entire detoxification program. So if you are having struggle with energy production and inflammation in general, I would definitely recommend trying out some NAD. All right, next up, we're going to talk about essential amino acids. One of my favorite supplements, been taking these for 5 or 6 years. I got introduced to these studying Ben Greenfield. He had some podcasts with Dr. Minkoff, and that's how I actually found Dr. Minkoff, and he was local, and I went out to his clinic. And essential amino acids are different than branched chain amino acids, so it has more of the amino acids that are essential in the body. Essential amino acids, it's pretty bizarre how much in the literature they actually support, it seems like every function in the body. Liver, gut, brain, muscle, repair, sleep. There's pretty much not a system in the body that isn't affected by levels of amino acids. And so you can, yes, get a lot of amino acids from your food, but you can also get a dosage of essential amino acids from something like Perfect Aminos by Dr. Minkoff. I used to use those. Now I use Keon. I kind of like Ben Greenfield's a little bit better, and I'll talk about why in a minute. But the essential amino acids, I take them in between meals, and they basically raise blood levels very rapidly, and they're going to help with all sorts of systems in the body. Especially a lot of people have gut issues on the program, and I have found that they definitely help with gut issues. So metallothionein production is one area that I've looked into a little bit. So cysteine is derived from methionine, which is an essential amino acids, key component there. And so the actual methionine could help optimize that metallothionein, enhancing the body's ability to trap and excrete heavy metals. And so that is one of the good ways that I think essential amino acids work. In particular, Dr. Minkoff specifically has said on podcasts and to me personally that he believes if you take essential amino acids, you could probably boost your detox program. He's more focused on like Lyme and cancer and stuff like that, but he does detox heavy metals and stuff like that too, just in a different way. And he thinks that your detox programs can go about 30% faster, which, if you start to break it down, like, hey, it may take 3 or 4 years, 2 to 4 years to eliminate most of said toxic burden. If you're talking about 30%, you're talking about a huge number there, a third of that. You could maybe knock off a year of how you feel in your detox program. I don't know how true that is. He's very deep in the research in essential amino acids, so I'll kind of take his word for it. Even if it knocked off 10-20%, you'd still be looking at a significant time period, and I think that you actually feel better. So when it comes to liver and kidney function, there's also things like leucine in there, lysine. Those really help the liver and kidney. Obviously, those leucine and lysine, and other amino acids are going to be critical for helping to maintain liver and kidney health there. So there are definitely going to be some nice like protein building blocks there that are going to be help for repair. Now, repair is another issue, especially anybody who's trying to not look very catabolic and frail. Like was one of my main goals with the detoxification program, because it's harder to work out, is me trying to keep a very protein rich diet, taking enzymes or digestive aids to help me break down that protein, and also the amino acids, so that you can kind of get a lot of good muscle and tissue maintenance and repair while you're detoxing. Because if you're not focusing on those amino acids, you can really break down muscle tissue very rapidly. There's been a few periods on my mineral balancing program where I have looked pretty frail, and it's kind of interesting because then, like, without much working out, you kind of bounce back as well. So there's something to be said where there's different area, when you have low zinc levels, when you have low NAK ratio, things like that, you're definitely in a catabolic state where you're basically breaking down muscle tissue as you're removing some of these heavy metals. And there's really no way to eliminate that process. That is just going to be what happens if you want to detox correctly. It's part of the program. So, holding on to extra water weight, not fun, not sexy. Breaking down muscle tissue, not fun, not sexy, but part of the program to heal, right? And so I like to use a little bit of a higher protein diet, maybe take some digestive enzymes for that, and then also take these extra amino acids so that I am doing more of this kind of muscle tissue and maintenance and repair that you can get without adding in extra food and extra calories. And so they're really, really good for stimulating your hunger hormones, in my opinion, or down regulating them, in my opinion, because you are getting 0 calories and getting amino acids into the blood very rapidly. It also helps with diet control, which I found to be somewhat of an issue. There's people on the program who want to cut calories because of the water weight that's actually happening on the program purposely. The body's actually holding on to that water weight on purpose. So I'm not really into the cutting calories. I actually think you need to be kind of overloading on calories, not to a crazy extent, but you need to be really, really nourished on this program to detox. You don't want to limit protein intake. You don't want to limit amino acid intake. Those things are going to be very supportive, and they also come with a lot of other micronutrients that are in high quality animal protein that you need for detoxification. So the actual method of detoxification requires a lot more nutrients. That's why we have nutrients in the supplements as well. But I like to add in the essential amino acids, so not only to help keep preserve a little bit of muscle while I'm detoxing, but also to help bring down my appetite a little bit, because I've found in periods where I'm eliminating parasites or heavy metals, whatever it may be, biofilms, things, nasty things coming out in my enemas, where I have, bizarre food cravings, ice cream, chocolate, these kind of things. So I can actually take, a serving or two of these amino acids and let that ride for like 30 minutes and actually will calm down that signal that I need to eat something. And so now I'm not always against eat some ice cream if you're really going through it. Just don't make it like a regular occurrence. But that is going to slow down detoxification. So those big meals, although you feel better by eating when you're really going through it, kind of calms down the brain. Especially if you're eating some carbs, you can kind of feel like you're calming down some inflammatory stuff. But it's also hindering the detox process, because now the body has to focus on the food and breaking that down and using energy for that instead of the detox process that it was going through. So although I recommend eating a nice amount of food, you don't want to be constantly snacking and eating all the time. I eat pretty decent sized meals in just 3 a day, so I give my body that time in between to focus on the detox instead of doing a lot of snacking. And so what I do instead is take the essential amino acids in between my first 2 meals. So it's like after, a couple hours after breakfast, I have some amino acids. And then between lunch and dinner, I have some amino acids again. And that is also also helping with detoxification, but also making sure I don't get extra food cravings, which generally come, in my opinion, with the elimination of parasites and heavy metals. You kind of just want to eat something because you feel like crap, right? So I think these are really, really good. They reduce oxidative stress. L-histidine in specifically is a heavy metal that has been shown. I know it's been shown to act as a ligand for metal chelation, not chelation like normal chelation, but kind of a more natural form. Really good at grabbing nickel. It can grab some other heavy metals. So I really, really love the addition of the L-histidine in the Kion products in comparison to perfect aminos. Unless they've changed anything over the past few years, they do not have L-histidine in the essential aminos. They're still going to do really, really good benefits for you, but I like the Kion brand by Ben Greenfield that has that L-histidine in it because of its actual research around heavy metal protection and detoxification. So there is actually some protective mechanism from the histidine specifically geared towards heavy metals. So that's going to really, really help you out and be at your advantage from that issue as well. All right, next up is one of my favorites is kava. A lot of people only kind of know kava for people who used to use alcohol and now they want like a natural drink alternative, right? Kind of to be social and things like that. But if you ever look into True Kava, the brand, their owner Cam, really cool guy. I met him at some shows, and he talked about his mercury detoxification experience and how he basically wasn't able to handle any kind of the detox protocols that he did without kava. And one of the main ways that kava acts in the brain is it interacts with the GABA receptors in the brain. So back to that mercury issue, right? So if you do have some mercury issues, heavy metals from, it could be from fish, but I know a lot of people have more in their brain. It seems like from the actual metal fillings, silver fillings they call them, but I like to call them mercury fillings, just more fitting. It is 50% mercury. And so the kava lactones definitely interact with the GABA, promoting more like brain relaxation and reducing stress. So this has been pretty critical. People ask me a lot of times, like, how do I push through taking high doses of valence, even though I'm sensitive and was super toxic and things like that. And one of the main ways has been kava. the CBD and the kava. You need to lower that kind of stress and that anxiety that's building up on a psychological and physical level when you're moving those heavy metals, especially maybe out of the brain. So kava directly is going to promote relaxation, help with GABA, and then it's going to kind of basically calm you down. And so that's what we're looking for from the kava. I actually drink one that has a small amount of kratom in there too. And that's helped me with a lot of my back pain. And most of my back pain has went away. I still get some bouts of back pain when I'm sleeping here and there. For the most part, the more I detox, the more I have basically no back issues. So you got to be careful if you're going to mix it, do the like the brands like Feel Free or New Brew where they have the kava with a little bit of kratom, because you could, definitely get slightly addicted to those, especially if you don't have any kind of control. So watch out for the ones that have kratom in there if you don't feel like you have total control, or if you have any kind of past addiction problems or anything. I don't want to get you into that realm. But kava, I haven't really heard too many people, if they just do like true kava, has like a liquid tincture, or they have like actual drinks you can drink out of the can. And so those are really cool if you just want something that's supportive. I haven't heard many people say that they got caught up drinking, 10 kava drinks a day. I mean, not to say that it can't happen because of that GABA, receptor and how it makes you feel. You may want more and more and more. But for the most part, I haven't heard a lot of people overdoing kava. Now, some people who were extreme alcoholics, they switch over to going to kava bars a lot. And I think they're kind of just replacing one addiction with the other, and kind of just slamming kava like at a bar, because I used to sit at a bar and drink whiskey or alcohol or whatever. It's kind of a different thing. If you're just having like, a kava here and there when you're really, going through a detox reaction, I think you're going to be relatively okay. There are some people who are scared about liver issues. I think liver issues come more from those people who actually sit at those kava bars. I've been to them before and chugged a bunch of kava. Not really my thing. I don't like to overdo the kava. I don't feel great. I like to just have, one or two here and there of the kava drinks. And so you can use that. It actually has some anti-inflammatory effects, improves sleep quality, and those calming effects that actually can support detoxification. And then if you overdo it, then maybe there is some of those liver issues. I'm not really sure. You want to make sure you're getting really clean kava as well. I'm not sure if kava bars are really, doing their due diligence with sourcing. And so I like true kava for straight kava. I like New Brew if you don't mind a little kratom in there. And I like Feel Frees as well. Feel Free also has capsules, which are cool. So you don't have to like have a drink. And like there's like 3 capsules in a dose, I think. So you can kind of even do some smaller dosages with that. So you can play around with kava, especially if you think that if you had any kind of mercury fillings, because I think that that's going to definitely have people who have more of that tendency to reach for something that's going to help support GABA. And usually that's alcohol. That's the problem. That's where I was at in my 20s and early 30s, is I believe that I had a lot of mercury in my brain. And so I wanted something to calm down that storm and that issue through GABA, but I would use alcohol, or I would use cannabis, but a lot of alcohol. So now that I didn't drink for a long time and kind of got sober and did all of that for a while, now I feel safer in my body to introduce something like kava, and it feels good. And I think that it really, really helps when I'm going through it, especially like I have a wife, I have a kid. I need to show up for them in a way that isn't just like some depleted zombie, right? So getting in a little drink like that is definitely effective. I feel more calm and stable through the detox, and I feel like I can show up more like a person, so that my wife and my child don't have to just stare at dad who's sitting around just detoxing all day. I'm already am detoxing all day. I'm doing the enemas, I'm doing the sauna. It's part of my work. I'm going to continue detoxing. But how do I use something like this to be a little bit more functional and a little bit more present while I'm going through it with the family? So play around with that if you want. Super cool. They come in drinks, they come in tinctures, they come in capsules. And so make sure you're doing due diligence about where they're sourcing it, and make sure that it's really, really clean. So True Kava would be my favorite brand for that. All right, next up, one of my favorites. We actually included it in a Valence supplement now, but I've been taking it pretty much the entire program. Magnolia bark. This is really, really good. This is traditional kind of Chinese, Japanese medicine here, herbal compound, pretty much. It's got a couple active compounds, agnolol and hanocoil. I don't never know how to pronounce those. They're definitely a little bit more Chinese, but those are the active compounds in there, and they really, really help with reducing stress and anxiety. And so they also act on that GABA receptor. It's kind of like nature's Xanax, they'll call it. And so if you kind of see where I'm going at here, I'm looking for things that lower inflammation and kind of work on GABA and anxiety. Those are issues that arise for people, and that's kind of one of the reasons that we put the magnolia bark or the relora into nerve calm. But I was using that before we even created that product, and now I just use the nerve calm because it has some other compounds that help with cortisol clearance and to help calm you down, and it's a product that we created, so I just take that now. But you can find magnolia bark however you want. I kind of like nerve calm because the blend and the synergies in there, specifically if you're in sympathetic dominance. Now this is really, really key. This is where some of these stress reducing compounds are really going to play for people who are in extreme fast or fast oxidation and or who are in sympathetic dominance with that really low potassium reading. You guys are probably going to benefit from some of these anti-anxiety compounds more than others, but just the eliminations of heavy metals themselves can cause a lot of, mental stress and, depression and anxiety and things like that. So I like to work with some of these compounds when I can, because if not, the detox feels overwhelming at some points. And so obviously, when it works with GABA, it's going to directly improve sleep quality. So a lot of people who wear Oura rings, or I wear a device called Soltec. It's a little bit more of a high-tech frequency magnetism device, but it also measures my sleep. I notice that I definitely get more deep rest and less waking up if my child sleeps through the night. I'll put that caveat in there. But if my child sleeps well and I took the nerve calm and had a little bit of the kava, then I will have better sleep scores, absolutely. So I really like the magnolia bark. It has anti-inflammatory effects, a little bit of anti-oxidant protection and stuff as well. And there's even some neuroprotective benefits of magnolia bark as well. Can potentially protect against neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, specifically by reducing brain inflammation and preventing plaque formation. So I think that that's really critical if you do have some heavy metals, especially ones in the brain. I think most of us do, who are a little bit more chronic. And so play around with the magnolia bark, or, you can take nerve calm if you like, or a lot of you might already be on nerve calm. It's been selling pretty well. And that does a really, really good job at keeping me a little bit more centered as well when I'm with the family at night, kind of going through the detox of the day and the enemas and the saunas and all that. And then if I'm feeling a little off and I'm feeling a little stressed, then I can take, a little bit of the kava, and I can take the magnolia bark, and the synergy between those two seem really, really good. And they help kind of balance me back into a more normal person to keep moving through the program and through the detoxification. And I haven't seen any negative effects, in my opinion, on any of the mineral levels from taking any of those compounds like that. So magnolia bark, nature's Xanax, get your hands on some, or just take nerve calm. I think you'll really, really find some benefits there. Next up is a newer kind of supplement that I've been playing with, which is homeopathics. A lot of people in the mineral balancing space, they really love homeopathics. I was first introduced to homeopathics when I was out with Dr. Minkoff. He did some muscle testing and different testing on me, and I did some homeopathics for Epstein-Barr virus and for Lyme specifically. Those two were showing up for me at that time. And I did notice that I would get some kind of Herxheim or detox reactions from those homeopathics. And he gave me, each bottle was a different dosage. So you kind of start with a lower amount, and then you kind of keep going, higher and higher until you can basically tolerate more and more of that homeopathic, and it was going to help your body kind of kill off or get rid of, Epstein-Barr and Lyme. That was for me at that time. Now, I've had Dr. Robert Seelig, who's going to be in this summit on my podcast. He's really big into homeopathics. A lot of the other practitioners are into homeopathics. I've never actually studied homeopathics, so I wouldn't know specifically which ones just to take, as I'm going through an elimination or something like that. I wouldn't know which ones to just grab off the shelf. Maybe I'll learn those in the future, but for now, I kind of don't really know which ones I would take. So I opted to take a bioenergetic scan. Amanda, she's a really great practitioner. She's going to be in this summit. She might even talk about the bioenergetic scan in her presentation. I'm not sure, but that's who I did my bioenergetic scan through. Seemed really, really cool. It talked about nutrient deficiencies in there, which were actually pretty much correlated to how I felt, and how some of the, calcium was on there, K2, boron. Those were things that I was kind of bumping up in my program anyways already, kind of intuitively. intuitively, but it also shows like emotions and can kind of dig into, more almost spiritual realms, I guess, looking at past life emotions and things that you may be carrying forward with you. So that gets a little woo woo, but it is cool. I like that I actually sent in saliva, some hair, and my fingernails. So I like that the homeopathics that were specifically made for me were based on kind of my biology instead of me just going based off of symptoms or learning a course or learning homeopathic. So I thought that that was really cool. It was kind of, wasn't very expensive for the test. And I think she said you can retest like every like 4 to 6 months. So you do a couple tests a year, get some new homeopathics that are based on that. But I definitely got a limp, like a chronic limp homeopathic, which I noticed the first time I took it, I kind of felt like warm and hot. So there was definitely a reaction happening there. Definitely probably helping just some lymph move around some stuff. A lot of us get that stagnant lymph. It's hard, especially when it's hard to like detox and move when you don't really feel that well on the program. So helping out the lymph is always going to be a good, in my opinion. So that's a really cool blend that I have based on my tests there. And the other one was for emotions. Now, my hair test has shifted dramatically. I believe it's due to the new valence supplements that we put out, the Fast Ox and the Shin Force, really doing a much better job than the previous supplements. But I also started taking these homeopathics in the last few months, and my hair test, my oxidation rate slowed down, my NAK ratio got a lot better. I definitely feel that limp. If I take a little bit too much, I can feel some detox reactions from it. So you definitely can start low and slow with just a few drops on that and kind of build your way up. But I think it's a cool addition. It just seems like it's supportive. I know it's a little bit more energetic, but homeopathics are a really good addition to the mineral balancing program. I prefer to base it off some type of testing instead of just kind of blindly grabbing a homeopathic. Nothing against that. If you have someone like Dr. Robert Seelig who's really been digging into homeopathics for decades, you're probably going to be in good hands. I just don't know as much about them, and I prefer to base it off something like a bioenergetic test that's reading my hair and my saliva and my nails. So you guys reach out to Amanda. She's a practitioner on the summit. She's great. She does mineral balancing. She uses valence. So you could work with her for HTMA, or you could, just get the bioenergetic scan from her and see how that works for you. For me, it seems like it's doing a really good job. I've been on them maybe like 2 months. I just got my second round of supplements from her, and I'm going to continue doing that and retest throughout the year and see things that have shifted and update the homeopathics and stuff like that. So really cool addition. And really wasn't all that expensive. Super easy to take, and they don't add a lot of extra time to your program. And Amanda did a really good job breaking it down. Shout out to her, great practitioner, and check her out for a bioenergetic scan. Next up is going to be peptides. There's probably 1,000,001 peptides that you could stack with the mineral balancing program. The one that I think really stands out to me, especially if you have like mast cell activation or histamine issues, is definitely going to be KPV. I think injections are always going to be superior when it comes to peptides. And I know a lot of people get a little sketched out about, injecting themselves, but it is really just a tiny insulin needle. It's not like an intramuscular injection that you would get maybe at the doctor or you would use for TRT or something like that. It's a very small insulin needle that you barely feel. You can just put it right in your stomach or wherever, and it feels almost like nothing. And so KPV is awesome, and I like it for its immunomodulatory properties, basically, and it helps to have a balanced inflammatory response. So it's not immunosuppressive where it's just shutting down inflammation, because not all inflammation is bad. So you want to have a more regular and balanced inflammatory response to things, and that's where KPV comes in. So it's going to shut down extra inflammation, but also have a normal inflammatory response, because you should have inflammatory responses to certain things. Workout's a good one. You're going to create some inflammation there. It's a healthy response, and then you kind of muscle tissue and build and repair when you sleep or when you rest. So you want to have more of that balanced immune response, in my opinion, and KPV supports that. I've heard plenty of different people say that it helped with lots of different histamine issues, mast cell activation. So if you have any of those kind of sensitivities, then you really want to maybe add in something like KPV as a peptide. And it's really good. It definitely supports the gut as well, KPV. And you could even do something like a BPC 157. Could be inserted here for healing the gut as well. And that's part of in my opinion, of our detox program. So when you have these heavy metals, you actually have a very leaky gut. You have a leaky intestinal barrier. So popping in something like a peptide that will help close the gut lining really well, on top of the mineral balancing supplements is going to help with recirculation and redistribution. Now, this is where I kind of disagree with some of the mineral balancing crowd, where they're just like, just take the supplements, the minerals will push out the metals, and you'll basically have no redistribution or recirculation. And I kind of disagree with that. I actually like things that are going to help close the gut barrier outside of, obviously the minerals do a great job at that as well, but it can be very long and drawn out process. And so I like peptides. They work very effectively. They work quickly, a little bit more on the expensive side sometimes, and sometimes people don't like the injections. But overall, if you can use one of these tripeptides effectively to close the gut barrier, you're going to get less of that reabsorption and that recirculation. You want to trap those metals in the gut, have nice fiber in your diet, and take a binder, in my opinion, and eliminate those out through the feces or urine. But you want to have good gut function when you're doing that. So KPV also helps your antioxidant system. It's going to neutralize free radicals. It really supports from oxidative damage and oxidative stress, which I think most of us have in today's toxic world. So I like the peptides. I really would only use that for very sensitive people who are having a lot of detox reactions or having a lot of histamine issues or mast cell activation issues. But KPV, maybe even some BPC 157 if you're really trying to heal an injury or heal your gut. And you can find those in oral, but I like the injections. So take a look at peptides. Jay Campbell is my favorite source. Anytime you are looking up a peptide of any sort, type in the name of the peptide and then type in Jay Campbell. He also has a peptide book. I've had him on my podcast. We talked more about TRT in my podcast, but he's been on many podcasts talking about peptides. He has his own podcast about peptides. There's not a single source, in my opinion, that I would rather run to if I have a question about a peptide. He writes article after article, does podcast after podcast. If you have any kind of questions or you're wondering how a peptide may work for you, look up Jay Campbell. I guarantee he has an article about it, or he most likely has a podcast about it. He even has a peptide book. He's always got dosages on there, where to find the cleanest peptides. I think now he has his own peptide brand. He used to recommend other brands, but I think now he's created his own. So you can even buy peptides directly from his source, and they're going to be really, pharma grade, really clean and quality peptides. Now, that's another issue with peptides as well. These are kind of research compounds. The FDA doesn't really like them. Maybe with the new administration who's came in with Robert Kennedy, maybe they're going to crack down less on peptides. I would like them to be more readily available and not to be, research compounds. In my opinion, they're very effective and very healing. And so you want to make sure you're getting a good, clean source of peptides. Same with, kava, same with, CBD. You got to make sure you're getting what you pay for, and you got to make sure there's not, heavy metal contamination and things like that. But with peptides, I think from what I understand is that some places, since it's not regulated as well, will just say, hey, you're getting this much BPC 157, but it's kind of like not what you're paying for or not the right dosage, or kind of watering it down or whatever they're doing so that it's less effective basically. So you want to pay a little bit more, get a clean source of the peptides. And I think KPV, especially from its immune modulating effects, in the way it supports the immune system, especially for the sensitive clients who have a lot of histamine reactions like I used to have, this can be very, very effective alongside of your program. And it really helps to shut down the crazy amount of inflammation a lot of us have, especially while detoxing. As always, it's not going to take away everything, but it does work. That being said, I might as well jump right into binders a little bit because I was already on the topic of recirculation and redistribution. This is what I think happens, in my opinion. I think over time, mineral balancing will keep working and working and working, but it is very long and drawn out. Some of these practitioners are still dumping metals 8, 9, 10, 12 years later, which is, maybe that's just the way it goes because we keep coming in contact with a lot of these heavy metals. But also my mind kind of works in a different way where I'm like, are we eliminating a lot of metals, but also recirculating a lot of metals, like moving them around, they don't quite get out of the body, and then we kind of redistribute them to another place in the body because we didn't have a good binder coming in. Now, the gut barrier matters a lot. That's why I touched on that with the peptides, but also a very, very good binder. I recommend Zeocharge. We are doing a little bit of a unique binder that'll be out later this year with valence, but we don't have that yet. I'm going to play around around with that and see if I like that more than ZeoCharge, or maybe there could be some kind of benefits to doing that complex binder from Valence, like in the daytime, and ZeoCharge at night. You might be able to play with both, but I'm going to play around with that later. But for now, I recommend ZeoCharge. I had my buddy Jeff Hoyt come on the show, or come on the collective, and kind of gear his video towards mineral balancing. So that should be a really, really good video. You guys should check that out. I have I think like a 3-hour podcast with him. That it's one of my most played podcasts. He's been on plenty of other podcasts. You can hear him. He has a YouTube channel, a lot of education on his ZeoCharge. It's technically Zeolite Labs. The name of the product is ZeoCharge. So check that out. That's my favorite binder. A lot of people do well with modified citrus pectin as well. There's some really good data about heavy metal eliminations. I kind of just like the higher dose Zeolite. I've been taking that for pretty much 2 years every single day. I do around 4 scoops a day of that. I know that can be a little bit more expensive for people. I generally tell my clients, if money is an issue, even taking 1 scoop at night before bed at least is going to still give you 5 grams of zeolite to mop up a lot of the stuff that we're moving around. And it's not just a focus on heavy metals, in my opinion. I do think mineral balancing does upregulate all of your endogenous detox pathways, and I do think that you can get rid of plastics and molds and things that we cannot read on the hair test. I do think that that's valid. But there's so many daily exposures. Like I live in Florida, there's tons of mold. You go in any of these buildings, there's mold, or you're always introduced to plastics. I live really close to an airport, so jet fuel and things like that. A lot of us live in the city where there's car exhaust and you're getting manganese toxicity. So there's a lot for the body to deal with. So, but aside from the heavy metals, we have to look at some of these other toxicities that are coming in. And so that's where ZeoCharge comes in and does a really, really good job. Like I'm not as scared of maybe polyester clothing a little bit if I want to look good, or maybe some microplastics here and there, because I constantly have the ZeoCharge coming in for the daily dose. And another piece that a lot of people overlook with ZeoCharge is the fact that it can grab onto some of these metabolic waste processes that happen, ammonia, histamine. So you can really calm down a lot of that storm that happens from detoxification with the ZeoCharge. I always tell people, not going to take away the detox reactions fully. You're still going to go through it for sure, but it's going to take the edge off, and it's going to help support the kidney and the livers who are already overburdened while you're pushing around a lot of these metals. So I'm not going to go super deep into ZeoCharge. You guys can listen to Jeff's video in the summit, but that's the binder that I recommend. And I think that there is definitely some areas with mineral balancing, as great as it is. I think it's the best foundation for nutrients on the planet. But I do think that we may be recirculating and redistributing some of these heavy metals that we're moving around. Next up, I think everybody's kind of on these nowadays. I don't know if I need to go through all of them, but I found it very beneficial, and I kind of was slow to pull the trigger on them. I actually had a client just send me a pack. He was like, they're working so great, I gotta just send you some for free, which I think they're like $100 for a month's worth, and he sent them over. That's how much he believed in them, and he needed me to try them out. And now I've been kind of vocal about how well they work, is the X39 patches. I knew some people here actually locally. I actually have met one of the highest level people of the company like a couple of years ago at a biohacking conference, and they were trying to talk me into them and this and that. So I'm kind of slapping myself for not jumping on these earlier. So if you've never heard of the LifeWave X39 patches, they're kind of like a transdermal phototherapy type of thing. You can put it pretty much anywhere on the body. Most people put it on their back of their neck here or on their stomach. And the light therapy also helps copper peptides. And so the GHK copper peptides that people are injecting, the X39 patches actually help with that. And I do think there is a big difference between the copper peptides and the copper, supplementation. They're definitely different there. And I think actually, the copper peptide that people are injecting may even help with how our body and our cells are actually utilizing copper, because copper has become so dysregulated. And I think when you're using maybe these patches or you're using the peptide, it's starting to help your body process and regulate copper in a better way that the specific supplements aren't doing. And so I think there is definitely some benefits to these patches working with that GHK copper peptide. It also has stem cell activation, wound healing. So the patches do enhance stem cells and wound healing and tissue repair. So obviously the detox program itself is breaking down. It's very catabolic. As we're getting everything out, you're breaking down. So that's where the essential aminos come in, the X39 patches. You want to start to regenerate and rebuild it'll happen naturally if you're just doing mineral balancing, but these are just some outside sources that help. I've noticed that it really, really helps to reduce inflammation and pain almost quite rapidly. Like some people have even experienced a little bit of like detox reactions. I don't know if that's from the copper peptide or from the stem cells, or maybe when you lower inflammation, the immune system starts to work a little bit better. But you might even only be able to wear one like every few days in the beginning. But I definitely noticed a very, very dramatic reduction in inflammation and pain when I started using the patches. I also noticed improved energy and stamina, just overall moving around, balance. It just seemed to have a little bit of a mood boosting effect and more energy coming in. So definitely noticed that. I also noticed a little bit that my skin is better. I don't know if that's from that the stem cells or the copper peptide, which is really, really good for collagen and skin repair. But I noticed that my skin looks better, my inflammation is reduced, and that I overall just feel better and I feel calmer when I use the X39 patches. So it's a multi-level marketing thing, so that kind of pushed me off in the beginning, but I have found some really, really good benefits in the Life Wave patches, specifically X39. I have heard that fast oxidizers do actually do better than others, so there has been some people who have taken the patches and haven't noticed much. I have been in fast oxidation for like a year and a half, so maybe that's why I'm getting better effects from that. But tons of people all across the spectrum who have been doing mineral balancing have really, really found that they get great benefits from wearing the X-Wave, the LifeWave patches. X39, they have a few other ones that work in a different way. I kind of am only touching on the X39 because that's the only ones that I've used. But check those out. They really, really do a good job. And next up is one of my favorite compounds of all time. I may never quit using this. Big time, long term bulletproof coffee, caffeine drinker. I still do have a small amount of caffeine in the morning. Love my morning brew. I know a lot of people cut it out for the program. I kind of use some hacks like L-theanine and CBD and blending MCT oil and stuff in the caffeine for like a more slow release caffeine so that it wasn't as stimulating as just drinking like a black coffee. And I also get mold free and regenerative. I use Purity coffee, so I still love my morning coffee. It's kind of like almost sacred to me. It's almost like a little ceremony, making my little brew, extracting my coffee, and putting all my little supplements inside of it, my mushroom powders and things like that. So I still love my coffee in the morning, but because I was so burnt out and doing the detox and still trying to run valence and other things, I would always basically reach for like an afternoon caffeine. So the issue with afternoon caffeine is, yeah, you may have drank it at 2 or 3, 4 p.m., but there's still a trace amount in your system when you're trying to go to sleep. You may say, oh, I sleep normal even if I drink caffeine late. Well, not really. If you start to track your sleep and you start to cut back your caffeine earlier and earlier in the day, you're going to notice, 10 times out of 10, in my opinion, there's very, very few people who don't cut their caffeine back and say, actually, I do get deeper sleep, better rest. So paraxanthine comes in, and basically paraxanthine is a metabolite that caffeine breaks down to. It's one of them. So you still get the effects on your adenosine receptors, which really helps you to not be sleepy, not be groggy, and to kind of get some work done. But it's definitely not as much of a nervous system stimulant as caffeine. And then the other benefit is that it actually clears out of the system. The half-life of it is dramatically shorter. Most of it is out of your system within 3 hours. And then all of it is out of your system within 6 hours. So if you take, caffeine at 3 or 4 p.m., you still got, trace amounts in your system when you're trying to go to sleep, which are basically your body's still trying to metabolize the caffeine. When you take paraxanthine at 3, by the time it's 9 p.m., it's already all out of your system. So that is really, really critical because we want to get into those deep sleeps. And it's also, although my business partner Aaron says it is a nervous system stimulant, it doesn't really feel like one much to me, and it definitely feels much less dramatic than actually having caffeine. And so there's a lot of other good properties. The paraxanthine, good for overall like blood flow to the brain, things like that, and it really just gives you a good mood boost. It kind of makes you feel better than coffee, in my opinion. You kind of get like a little bit of swagger, but you're not all like cracked out and anxiety ridden. So a lot of people in four lows, a lot of people in sympathetic dominance, or just people who have sluggish liver function, they generally don't do that well with caffeine. They can get, they just, they might feel like they got more energy, but it also a lot of anxiety and other issues that arise, especially if you're getting like cheap, crappy coffee from like Starbucks that has mold and stuff in it. But some people even react to a really clean coffee, even if they're trying to do it bulletproof and everything like that. So paraxanthine can come in and replace caffeine for you. And you just got to play around with the dose that works for you. They sell the paraxanthine capsules right on Amazon now. Efinity is the brand that has the patent on it. There's update drinks. The update drinks are really, really great. Sean Wells creates those, but they do have some added like B vitamins and stuff that I don't really want on my program because we're already doing the B vitamins. And, especially if you're like in fast oxidation, you don't really want to do the extra B vitamins and stuff like that. It's going to speed up your oxidation rate. And so I just like to do the paraxanthine capsules. Same guy, Dr. John Lawrence, who does the NAD suppositories that I talked about, the Mitozen company. They have the Santori bars that are really, really cool. Some of those are mixed with methylene blue, and then some I think are without methylene blue. There's two different versions, and those are kind of like troches that you just swallow. They come in like a bar, and there's some other really cool compounds in that, so you could even try that paraxanthine. The update drinks are even great. Like I said, they just have some extra B vitamins and stuff that I try to stay away from on the program. But the capsules are really, really my bread and butter. I keep those on hand. They're really great for some afternoon productivity when you don't really want to stress the nervous system too much, but you need to get some done. And so anybody who's sensitive to stimulants, play around with paraxanthine, maybe even bust open a capsule and take half, only take 100 milligrams instead of 2. Just play around with that and see how you feel with paraxanthine, but highly, highly recommend it. I think it's going to be much better for sleep in general, especially if you're an afternoon coffee drinker. And it's also a little bit more productive. Like I used to have to spin them, I do a French press when I do a coffee. So making a coffee, it takes a little bit of time, which I don't mind in the morning because I'm kind of making breakfast and taking my supplements and stuff. But, in the afternoon, I'd have to stop my work, go, brew a coffee, do all of that. And now I can just pop a paraxanthine pill and just keep it going. And then you can just have paraxanthine on you if you're out and about trying to be social. And I've heard a lot of people say that they can take that, 3, 4 p.m. and not have any issues with sleep. So paraxanthine's great. We're trying to get our hands on it over at Valence and maybe formulate our own type of paraxanthine supplement. So be on the lookout for that maybe in the next year. Overall, right now, there's capsules and they're available other places. So check out paraxanthine. I promise you're going to love it. If you have any sensitivities to caffeine, get on the paraxanthine. All right, and that's about it for the actual supplement portion of the kind of outside things that I use. There might be a few others that I use here and there, but those are the ones that I think directly help with anxiety or inflammation or, GABA, so that you kind of feel more calm and in your body while you're detoxing. So those are the main supplements that I use. But there's also some outside therapies that some people are using on the program and some are not. The number one therapy, in my opinion, is really, really good chiropractic work. I like to do upper cervical care. It's NUCCA is, what you can look up online, NUCCA. If you look up the NUCCA website, you can look at find a practitioner near you. I actually have the head of NUCCA 25 minutes from me, so it's a little bit of a drive, but I still go out there once every 2 weeks, and it's a lot different. So they're going to use very, very specific x-rays and see where your subluxations are. Subluxations of the spine generally basically mean, your C1 or your C2 is kind of, popped out of place one way or the other. And when your C1 or your C2 are out of place, well, it starts to cause spinal issues all the way down. Your hips can be uneven, your feet. When I first went to see her, my feet were an inch different in length, and I had really no idea. I did have a lot of hip pain, so that made a lot of sense. And so I've had other chiropractors on my podcast who actually have said that biochemical, environmental, emotional stressors, heavy metals, molds, plastics, things like that, can actually cause subluxations. And so the curvature of your spine matters a lot from your neck position. And I like to use a neck nest pillow or a different pillow that you can get from certain chiropractors that help with, your neck and your spinal curve. But also the subluxations are coming a lot of times, in my opinion, from these environmental toxins. So they're causing issues. If anybody on a mineral balancing program, at least for me and a lot of my clients, start to notice back spasms and muscles loosening up. And that's kind of the rebalancing. So I think, over time, mineral balancing could work, but you want to keep that spine in alignment while you're going through the program, in my opinion, because all of that is connected to your organs, to your nervous system, and having that spine in alignment, especially that upper cervical, is going to allow for the cerebrospinal fluid to enter the brain better. So when you have a subluxation and it's kind of cocked one way, maybe your neck's like this a little bit, even though you look straight, it's kind of out of place. You're kind of shutting off one of the valves in your brain. And so you want that cerebrospinal fluid to be going in and out. And so that you can kind of get in there, cerebrospinal, grab some of that waste and clear some of it out. When you have a subluxation, you're going to have issues with the detoxification of the brain. And I actually used to get some kind of like slight Herxheimer reactions and want to take a nap and stuff when I first started doing the upper cervical care, especially when I started stacking it with mineral balancing. And so I highly recommend getting a good chiropractor in general. Upper cervical care is really good. My buddy, Dr. Travis, who's up north, he does something called ABC, and he's done that on me a couple times. And that's another really good therapy. It's kind of like manual therapy mixed with chiropractic work. He's like another high level. I don't know if all ABC chiros are as good as him, but I've had him on my podcast, and he's one of the best that I've ever worked with as well. But for me, locally, and I think a lot of people who live in cities, they can probably find on that NUCA website an upper cervical care chiropractor. And so the way it's different is after they take the x-rays, they can see exactly where your subluxation is and your C1 and your C2. And they actually put you on one side or the other. There's no cracking and breaking. I know everyone like wants to hear that crack and it feels like you loosened everything up, but you don't actually really need that. They're going to basically lay you on your side and they have a little gun and they know exactly where your subluxation is and what angle to hit it from the x-rays. And so then you only have to do the x-rays one time and they kind of know where your body tends to keep that subluxation. So it's, it's a little bit costly on the front end. I think it was like $300 for a initial consultation and then to talk to you for an hour and then to do the x-rays is like a couple hour thing. But then after that, it's just like a normal adjustment, $60, $50. I've seen it vary all around the place. And so they basically take that little gun and it just and it pops those two right back into place. You'll feel your hips shift into balance. You'll be perfectly in alignment. Your feet will be, the same length and your entire back will release. Like I used to have a crazy back. My lower right back would just be so tight through the mineral balancing, getting rid of a lot of the toxins that affect it, but also keeping consistent with that upper cervical care has been one of the most critical pieces in how I think that I keep moving through the program quicker and, better than other people. You want to have the spine in alignment. If you can only find a regular chiropractor, even just do that. But upper cervical care, if you can get your hands on it, highly, highly recommend it. Next up, what I really love is reflexology. It's been a while for me. I know Dr. Wilson and some of the other practitioners talk about this a lot, but I think it's kind of overlooked. Although Dr. Wilson has a lot of articles and talks about it quite a bit, not a lot of people are actually doing it. So your hands and your feet have all sorts of different nerve endings and points on them that directly correlate to adrenal function, liver function, kidney function. And if you can find an advanced reflexologist who actually knows what they're doing, sometimes it's just like, it just feels like a foot rub and you can tell that they don't know what they're doing. I've had that before, felt like I wasted money. So really like do due diligence, look at the website, maybe ask them questions, make sure they're really, really deep in the weeds on reflexology and what they're doing. I have one of the best in the world. Again, down here in Tampa, I don't know how I was blessed with such good practitioners down here, but he flies around and writes books. He gets, paid to speak overseas and all that stuff. And he can do like a whole reading based off your feet. He actually told me that I was calcium deficient when I first seen him through reflexology, and legit I was plant-based at the time, so that makes a lot of sense. He told me some other, psychological things and personality things that he could all read from my feet. So I thought that was really interesting just from the way your feet are kind of like a roadmap, but also he's opening up these organs of elimination. So if you can find a good reflexologist and do that pretty frequently, manual lymphatic massages and stuff like that are really good too. But I think there's something in the feet specifically that really, really gets things moving around. It's going to be good for lymph. It's going to be good for your organs of elimination. So I highly recommend doing some due diligence and seeking out a really, really good reflexologist for sure. Next up is going to be dental work. Very, very overlooked. It's the cause of a lot of people's issues, and you really, really need to do some due diligence. Now, this is super expensive. I have been spending money on dental work for years. I actually have you might not be able to see them, but My Invisalign I just got on a week ago, so I'll get into that in a minute. But what I first did is obviously made sure that obviously all of your mercury fillings are out. You want to get them extracted by a IAOMT certified dentist or a biomimetic dentist. You want to make sure they're using vacuums and proper care. I mean, if they're removing mercury fillings without looking something like Darth Vader, then you're probably not in the right place, and you're probably gonna cause an acute mercury exposure from the extraction. So IAOMT or a biomimetic dentist, those are who you want to look for. And so make sure, first and foremost, you try to get the fillings out. That's actually more of on the cheaper end. That's not the most expensive. But if you've ever had a tooth pulled or you had your wisdom teeth pulled, then if it wasn't by one of these certified dentists, there's most likely a cavitation there. And I had 4 of them. My wife had 4 of them, all from where our wisdom teeth were removed. And they were critical pieces into our healing. We noticed better gut function, better energy. And so basically they go back in there, open up the spaces where you had your teeth pulled, and they have to clear out this pocket of infection that's been created from where you got your tooth pulled. Because that pocket of infection is pretty bizarre. They've done samples over the years where there's mold in there, there's food particles in there, there's bacteria and stuff in there that your immune system technically knows is there, but it can't get to it. And so it's causing autoimmune conditions and inflammatory responses and, all sorts of food intolerances simply because there's basically a foreign infection that your immune system wants to fight, but it can't actually get into the cavitation to kill it off. So they have to go in there and they open it up, they clean out the infection. A good dentist is going to use ozone and things like that. But there's also something called the periodontal ligament. This is the number one question you should be asking any dentist if you're getting a tooth pulled. Do they know about the periodontal ligament? Do they know anything about cavitations? Do they have a cone beam scan, a 3D cone beam scan in their office? Are they even aware of cavitations? Most dentists who aren't certified and did the IOMT and they really do more holistic practices, they're not even going to be aware. That was just the number one question. I had a friend who was going to get, her wisdom teeth pulled, and I goes, you can cause cavitations. I kind of sent her down a rabbit hole because she was supposed to get the operation the next morning. And I was like, well, just call them and ask if they do anything to the periodontal ligament, because they have to cut that ligament in a specific way so that the cavitation basically cannot be created there. And they didn't know anything about the periodontal ligament, and she backed out. And I felt bad because I kind of sent her down a rabbit hole the night before her procedure, but overall I felt like I helped her and I saved her money, because you're going to pay to get the teeth pulled, and then you're going to have to go back and pay. I think I paid like $6,000 or something to get my cavitations removed. And I was broke at the time and had all chronic illness. I had to take a loan out from the bank to even get the cavitations removed. I had to pay it off over the course of like 3 years because I had the Lyme. I was just racking up credit cards. I was doing everything that I could to try to heal. And so that's a big missing piece. That's definitely more advanced dental work itself. So you want to get rid of the fillings. You want to get rid of the cavitations. And then now I'm doing the Invisalign because I have a cross tooth overbite. So this is also going to cause a lot of TMJ issues, can cause headaches. When your bite is not proper, then you can get headaches. Basically, every tooth is related to a different organ and system in the body. And if your bite is improper, then you're actually going to basically kind of shut down oxygen to the brain. It causes issues. There's basically a disconnect in your energetic system due to the bite. And so I have a cross tooth in the back here where the bite's not proper. It's actually causing some gums to recede, and I have an overbite. So I'm on my way to fixing that now as well. Very, very new. I can tell that I'm grinding less. I think I was grinding my teeth in my sleep. Maybe that was from detoxification, I've read that, when you're grinding your teeth, sometimes it's trying to stimulate your lymphatic system, your detox system of your brain. So it's kind of like doing it on purpose, but obviously that's not good for your gums and your teeth. And so it's kind of like a guard for the grinding, but also over time I'm going to have more of an alignment in my bite, and so that my structure, it's good for back pain, it's good for being in alignment, and it's also very, very good for all the organs and systems in the body. So perfecting your bite, obviously that's another advanced therapy, but more so getting rid of the heavy metals that are in the fillings, that are in those old school crowns that we used to get. You want to get that stuff out of the body, and you want to make sure you don't have cavitations, because I think that those are causing a lot of autoimmune conditions and stuff like that, specifically from the dental work. You got to have good dental. It's one of the most common overlooked places For anybody who's trying to do the deep healing work, I know it seems like it's never ending, but dental issues cause systemic issues and you want to get rid of them. All right. And the last little piece, I'm going to talk about a couple things here. Ozone is a big one for me. Ozone has been great. I think a lot of people overdo ozone, and I think that that's where they get into issues, especially if you're a little bit more chronic. And so I was like paying for these really, really expensive ozone IVs when I was out doing the Lyme treatment, which maybe it killed off the Lyme. And, I was doing so many other therapies at the same time. It was hard for me to tell exactly what was happening. But then I was sick of driving out, 30 minutes to the clinic and then paying a bunch of money for the IVs and sitting there. So I just decided to buy an ozone unit myself. It's actually sitting right back here. You can kind of see it over here in the side right there. So it has an ear insufflation and a rectal insufflation that you can just do at home. And so the device, I think when I bought it, it was like 12 or 1300, but I think, with inflation and everything crazy going on, it might be closer to like 1800. They do have payment plans that you can do to pay monthly, especially if you're someone who's already like kind of chronic and you're going to pay at a clinic anyways. That was what I was doing. So I was like, I'm cool with paying for this monthly because I'm saving money and time from driving to the clinic. So ozone is O3. It helps with supporting all of your detox system. It helps to kill off parasites and biofilms. I mean, if you look into ozone, the research is like never ending. It's good for performance and recovery. Like when I use the ear insufflation, I feel like I have a little like mood boost. It's almost like a nootropic. It does a really, really good job. And the problem is people overdo it. You have these bags and there's different gamma concentrations that you can do. In my opinion, you want to start extremely low and slow, especially if you're sensitive. If you're in relatively good health, you can go in and get an ozone IV or get do a big bag of rectal insufflation and you'll be fine. If you're more chronic like I was, I tried to do the higher doses, the full bag, and it would just smoke me, right? And so you want to do it a little bit low as far as the gamma setting. I use Simply O3, by the way. I have a podcast with Micah. I actually know Micah pretty well, the owner. Really great guy, makes a great device. And so you want to go low on the gamma and you want to go small amount and then see how you react to that. And it's kind of like micro doses of ozone. So people have come out and said that ozone smoked them or ozone did, and I just think that they're doing too much. The dose always makes the poison, right? You're probably just killing off too much at one time if you have parasites and biofilms and all the stuff that we kind of get when we start to have more heavy metal toxicity or environmental toxicity. So you want to go low and slow with the ozone and you will still get dramatic benefits. You can do an ear insufflation or you can do the rectal bag. The rectal is probably the best, I would say. It kind of enters right into the bloodstream. They say it's actually probably about as like 90% effective as an IV, and it's way cheaper. The oxygen tanks are relatively cheap. Like once you buy the initial thing, you're spending almost no money on the therapy over time, and you just have it for life. You just have to buy some new bags every so often because the bags will break down. But it's very, very like for a really, really effective therapy is really, really cheap once you actually buy the device and you'll have the device for a lifetime. And so ozone therapy is great. There have been many times where I had done an enema and then right after did the ozone and I had basically seen like parasites come out. So I don't know if the enema already kind of released some blockages or moved some stuff around but didn't quite get the parasite or the biofilm out. And then I would use the ozone directly after and, just boom, it would just come right out. I think ozone's highly effective. And another one that I use pretty regularly is PEMF, Pulsed Electromagnetic Field Therapy. I like 10 hertz. I use Therapies. I have an ad for them on my podcast. I use their sauna and their PEMF. Everyone kind of knows the benefits of saunas. Most practitioners are telling people to use infrared sauna, so I don't really need to dive deep into that. But Therapies is a very, very affordable brand that's highly effective. Their sauna is as good as any other sauna that I've ever sat in. And so you can look into them. They also have red light panels, so you're kind of getting red light therapy alongside of the infrared therapy through the sauna. So it's like you're basically stacking hacks there. But they have a really, really great affordable PEMF therapy. And it's just a mat that you have at your house. You can get the smaller ones a little bit cheaper, or I have the bigger mat. And this is really, really great. Some of the science on 10 hertz PEMF therapy actually shows that it's like triples the mitochondria in your brain. I've also seen that it helps with bile flow production, helps support the liver, helps support kidneys, going to lower down inflammation. It's really great for my back pain when my back pain used to be worse earlier on in the program. Like for the longest time, I was doing like an hour of PEMF therapy a day. Like it was like a non-negotiable. There's also some red light therapy that comes out through the Therasage mat specifically. So I kind of lay where my liver is on the red light therapy. So I'm kind of getting a little bit of that red light therapy through the PEMF mat. But then also the pulse electromagnetic fields are helping to calm down inflammation, helping with bile flow. I always kind of feel some rumbling in my gut a lot of times when I'm there, so I really think it helps with like maybe lymphatics. There's definitely research around lymphatics, and a lot of that is in your gut. So it's got a heating element to it too, so you can set the heat, and so like kind of warm the body up. You get some red light therapy, and then you can choose which frequency you want the pulse electromagnetic fields to resonate at. And I like 10 hertz. 10 hertz is great. It's gentle as far as detoxification. It just seems very supportive on the side. I feel like I'm more clear headed when I do it. I feel like my organs of elimination are working better. I feel like my lymph is flowing. And so those kind of like sauna and PMF therapies are really, really good at getting the blood flow going and getting the lymph going without having to do a workout. And that's my thing. I think people work out too much because they don't feel that good. But when you work out a lot, your body has to divert its mineral resources and its energy into muscle repair and, building back up that tissue that you broke down. And so these are therapies that you can use to get a good sweat, to get the blood flow going, and to move around lymph without actually exhausting yourself. You're basically just laying there or sitting there. So PMF is my other favorite hack. You got the ozone. I even use hydrogen. Hydrogen is really good as well. It works a little bit differently. Super, super crazy as far as the research goes. I have right there as well. You can see it in the back, my hydrogen system. So I drink the hydrogen water pretty regularly as well. Really, really good for stimulating NRF2 pathways, which are detox pathways. Also really good for antioxidant properties, energy production. Hydrogen is a very small molecule, so it's really, really easy to get into all the cells and work its magic. So I'm not going to go super deep on hydrogen, but I want to just get into a few of the other therapies that I use outside the program that I think are supportive for detox. And I know all of this makes things a lot more advanced. They're probably like, this guy's insane. Does he do anything besides detox? Kind of not really. I hang out with my family and run my businesses, and that's about it because I'm still a little bit in the weeds. I'm out the other side in a lot of ways, and then in a lot of ways I still do get smoked from my detox. So I like to have my supportive mechanisms so that I don't feel so bad when I'm doing the detox. All right, well, I've been talking too long here. Anyways, hour and a half. I didn't even realize it. Cool. But I wanted to give you guys an outside glance and some of the things that I use outside of the normal, just sauna, enema, and mineral balancing supplements. Thank you guys for watching the video. Thanks for everybody who's submitting a video to our HGMA collective. Anybody who continues to support Valence, we really, really feel like this is part of our karma. It really, really is just a passion for us. That's why we're so obsessed with it. We like the results that we're getting with Valence, and that the results that all of the clients and practitioners are coming back to us with, saying how much more effective these supplements are than other HTMA supplements that they've tried. So we love you guys for supporting us. That's why we wanted to give a free event. We love just trying to continue the education around this. We know Valence is new. We know it was a little bit of a jump for some of you guys to switch from something that you know into the unknown, but I do think that it is beneficial, and I think that we are advancing the HGMA and the detoxification space in a very, very honorable way, being transparent, trying not to be super money hungry with how we, price the supplements. We're trying to do the best that we can, but also creating the most advanced supplements that we can to detoxify, because we are becoming more and more toxic. And this is how we are going to try to stop our future generations from being so toxic. We need these good supplements. We need these advanced therapies, because I feel like if we keep trending in the way that we have and people are going to feel like I felt, then we're going to have some kind of societal collapse. I think we're already kind of in it a little bit. Everybody's on anxiety meds, and there's birth control thrown in, and there's chemicals every which way. So I do think that all of us spreading this detox message, and especially with mineral balancing, no matter which supplements you use, as long as you're, getting rid of heavy metals out of people, and people are feeling better, and regulating their cycles and getting pregnant and having healthy babies. That's the goal. And we want to just keep putting out education for everybody. So I want to thank everybody who showed up, who continues to support me, Valence, my podcast. Thank you guys so much.